What's up, everybody? It's Ruben here, obviously, because you're watching this on my page. And I just wanted to take a few minutes. I've been in this spinning place with all the news going on, and I just wanted to take a moment and share my philosophy of life. I have been hesitant to share this for years and years and years, mainly out of fear of coming off weird, but it's something that I always go back to, especially in times like these. That's been tremendously helpful for me in the last few weeks. And with a lot of the clients I get to work with in a coaching capacity, it's something that resonates a lot with them as well. And so I just wanted to take a moment today, with all the craziness going on, to share two key ideas that I try to hold on to all the time. The first one is that the rule is change. And that sounds like a pretty obvious cliche, but I'll get into how I come to think about that. And then the second one is that humans have an unbelievable potential to do incredible things. And again, that sounds like a cliche, and it is, but we'll talk through a little bit about how I think about that. When I think about the rule has changed, this has been a really helpful assumption to take. As if you take as the baseline that everything is always changing, then when we're in environments like this, where there's a lot of change happening in our lives and a lot of unknown questions, it becomes a little bit easier to navigate because you understand that that's the natural order of things. And I think we tend to run into a lot of trouble when we want so hard for things to stay the same. And again, it's really easy to say that in the comfort of one's own home, and I get that. But I just think we run into so much mental angst when we're trying to keep everything the exact familiar square that we know of, when in reality everything's always changing. The other piece to this is when we first assume that everything stays the same, it's really hard to feel like you're part of something bigger in life. And I think that yearning to be part of something bigger is why people join a lot of faith communities. I think that's why people join a lot of sports communities. That's why people find their clubs to go to, their meetups, a certain family, if they're very family centered, and so on. And I just think there's this yearning. But as we've gone into a more digital environment, as we're currently in a lot more of a social distancing climate here in this world, as we've gotten really divisive in our media and in the way that we talk to each other, it can be really hard to feel like you're really part of anything bigger than yourself, especially anything that can be extremely meaningful. So if you'll just sit with me for a moment, and as you're watching this, just sit as still as you possibly can. What is happening right now is that we are moving at about 68,000 miles an hour. And I know it doesn't feel that way, but we are pulled to this earth right now. And this earth that you can feel, that you're a part of, that you can touch, is orbiting our sun, this bright exploding star in our sky. It's orbiting that sun at 68,000 miles an hour. And I think a good analogy is if you think about being on an airplane and you go from New York to LA, right? The classic cross-country flight. When you're on the airplane, if you're in a period of steady state and no turbulence, it can start to feel like you're not actually moving anywhere. But when you get off the plane, you can sure as heck believe that you went from point A to point B. And so I always try to keep that frame of reference whenever I think about just life in general, is that no matter what I'm doing, no matter how still I'm trying to keep things, no matter how much I don't want things to change, I am constantly moving at a breakneck speed through this massive space that's so incomprehensibly large that it just grounds me in remembering that everything changes all the time, whether we want to or not. That's just the way this whole system was designed. And that's where I go to the second space analogy. And we often forget that the sun is orbiting a black hole in the center of our galaxy. And in order for the sun to complete one orbit, like 1 year for us, it takes about 230 million years. And if you try to think about that, that's before humans existed in whatever form we are. And I don't remember how far back the dinosaurs were, but whatever was around at the time, we were not a part of that story. And yet the Earth was still spinning around the sun. And so I think about this all the time, because in moments that are really hard, it can be really easy to feel really alone and feel like you're totally isolated. And I always just go back to something that science has already proven, that we are naturally, by design, already part of a way bigger picture than any of us really ever take time to think about. Now, that's how that lands for me. And I've shared this with enough people now that I know that for a couple folks sometimes, the actual reaction to that thought train tends to be, ooh, wow, now I feel actually really meaningless. And I get that, because when you really, really zoom out as far as we just did to talk about space and the universe and black holes, it can be really, really easy to remember that we're just this tiny little speck on this tiny little blue dot, right? But in those moments is actually when I go into the other direction, which brings me to the second pillar of my philosophy of life. And that is that humans are incredibly well suited for incredibly high potential things. And here's what I mean. For anything to have matter, that is something that we feel, it has to be made up of atoms. I'm made up of atoms, you're made up of atoms, this whole world is made up of atoms. And if everything is, as Einstein proved with E equals mc squared, energy and mass are just two sides of the same coin, then it's really interesting that 99.999 something percent of an atom is not matter. It's actually just energy that we can perceive, but we cannot physically interact with. So take those facts and think about yourself and all the things that make you up. You've got your arms, you've got your head, your torso, your legs. You've got a lot of stuff going on. Well, when you think about atoms and that scale of things, we're talking every adult human has about 7 billion atoms that hold you together all day long, who trade electrons and hold hands, as I like to think about it, so that we can wake up into another day. And in terms of what actually you can feel, all these organs that do all these amazing things we were just talking about, remember that is 0.00001% or something like that of the actual energy that is available to all atoms. And so all of a sudden, when you start to think about the world through that lens and yourself through that incomprehensibly complex and well orchestrated harmony, you start to realize that through your conscious attention of the thoughts that you focus on, of the stories that you narrate to yourself in your head, of the mental models that you maintain as ways of how the world works, you start to notice that where your attention goes and how you process things that occur in your life has an insanely powerful impact on how you then experience the world later on. And so if there's all this energy that's available to you, that's already within you with all the atoms available at your source, then you all of a sudden become an incredible transformation instrument. So you can take all the things that are happening in the world, you can take all of these emotions, all of this energy and motion, and start to translate that through your own will into something that is valuable for you. So here's an example. In moments like right now, one of the things that's been most important to me is to get some absolute quiet alone time. And that's just what I need for my fuel. And so sometimes I do that through some meditation, but other times I just do that just by sitting, looking at absolutely nothing and checking absolutely nothing for half an hour or sometimes even more. Now, that's me translating for myself all this energy that's in motion into something that impacts me in a more healthy way. And once you start to realize that you could do this with energy, once you start to realize just how much energy is available to every single human, no matter what they do as a profession or where they were born or what country they live in, but as a base fact of humanity, all of us have the ability to, through our conscious awareness, start to translate energy just a little bit better, to start to introduce moments that actually matter to ourselves in our own lives, even when things are crazy out there. Thank you for watching. I'm Ruben Martinez. That's my philosophy on life that shapes every single interaction that I have and every single experience that I have on this life. And I have historically been so afraid to go there, but I really think that we need to honor our truth right now more than anything. So I hope this was useful. Talk to you soon.